let's take a look into the StarEngine, how it's going to change the game. Ray tracing and server meshing and eyeballs and bloody noses and damage and stuff. Let's go. Sounds good. Let me know how the sound is.
Bonjour! Bonjour, citizencon. We are so happy to be here. It's been so long to see you guys physically and just being able to interact. It's been fantastic so far. We're super excited about all this. The video you just watched outlined a lot of features in the StarEngine. It's a reminder of what makes this game so special. It's a focus on fidelity. I said it. It's a focus on immersion. And it's a focus on seamlessness, being able to go everywhere, and you're just there. The accomplishments from the tech teams at CIG have been numerous in building all the technology that allow you to run the game and allow you to experience the same things that we see in our dev setups. And so what we're about to see today is a deep dive into all these features. But first, I wanted to touch really quickly on this last year. We have launched persistence, or added persistence. It's been a rocky road this year, and I want to thank you guys for keeping on playing, giving us a hand, giving us good bug reports. It's been fantastic for us to improve the stability of the game, so thank you so much. You guys deserve a hand of applause. Thank you so much. I just want to touch on one bit, which is that all the people you will see in the next couple tech panels are really the best of their crafts in the world. They are infused by a value that we tremendously value at CIG, which is relentless optimism. That this game can be made, that this vision can be achieved. And so, without further ado, but first, I got one more thing to say. So, in all of the different panels that you'll see, all the updates, everything that you'll see on screen, whether it's a HUD, an MFD, a ship UI, FPS weapons, everything, all of this is new. So as you watch the clips, you're going to see some differences. That's because this all comes from the freshest implementation that we have. We love open development. We love to show you guys the work in progress. And so that's exactly what we're going to look at today. And so without further ado, I'll leave you with Marco, who will show you all the cool and amazing features of our engine and the challenges that we face. Thank you so much, guys.
That dude's a genius. I mean, all these people are geniuses in my mind. They're really smart. But Benoit, I think everybody who's been following has noticed how much the Montreal team and Turbulent themselves have made a difference in Star Citizen. From the website to the UI to like new locations, the hospitals, all that stuff, they just developed the heck out of, and we continue to see it grow. It explains why they acquired the studio. So I'm super grateful for Benoit.
Thanks, Benoit. Hello, I am Marco Corbetta, VP of Technology, and we're going to talk about StarEngine today. We have been developing StarEngine for many years with the goal of creating an online living universe. But creating a universe is not an easy task, and even more difficult to do everything seamless without any loading screens or invisible walls. And massive spaceships flying very fast, close to the terrain and objects, are pushing the limits of procedural generation and streaming. This is not a single-player game.
Wait a second, what did I just see there? Hey, Mrs. Tomato, your arrow is here, the one you just gave away. Sorry.
Streaming. This is not a single-player game, so creating this universe online is making everything more challenging. We stream and generate physics on server on CPU, and we already support more than 100 players on a single server.
To be honest, this is like, I mean, we all know this, right? He's really just introducing the idea of this, but this is stuff we hear about constantly. This is like the whole everything is going to get better after server meshing kind of thing. But it really, I'm glad that people are watching that engine trailer and like liking what they're seeing, and that they finally gotten a video out that actually goes mainstream to explain this stuff. But B, it's just really, really, I like that they continue to knock this down, because like the fact that it's online is such a pain. Oh my gosh, I just looking at Squadron 42 and I'm realizing how much better it's going to play. I'm sure they're going to optimize Star Citizen, but like there's no way Squadron 42 doesn't just naturally play as a better game because of the whole online aspect. I was never an online player, so that's interesting to me, but it's cool.
With server meshing. To support all this, the engine must do a lot of work every frame. So in a typical StarEngine frame update, we got up to 64 hardware threads, about 200 software ones, over 700,000 streamed in entities, and millions of entities overall in the solar system. About 150,000 updates per frame. We have over 200 vehicles, spaceships, and ground ones, over 2 million physical objects, over 100,000 objects generated per frame when flying over the terrain. We have many unique locations, streaming on demand in a seamless, gigantic space. Also, we are supporting many new features that we are going to showcase today. I'm going to start in introducing the new and improved clouds and fog, worked on by custom vendor in the R&D team. The first new feature is the light shafts. They are volumetric shadows from clouds cast into the atmosphere. They're truly volumetric and 3D.
I want to hear you guys' opinion on this, because I feel like we've had pretty good looking light shafts in the game, but I'm guessing they were faked maybe. And what we're seeing here are, okay, yeah, so he even says it here. They're truly volumetric and not a post effect. I've already loved what we've seen, but I guess this also makes them perform better. What do you guys think of the clouds in game? Do you think they're getting close to that demo from 2021 from what we've seen here? Or do they still have a ways to go? Because I feel like these are pretty good advancements, but let me know what you think in chat.
Fully integrated. They're not just a post effect as it is usually done in games. With this, the atmosphere from an overcast sky gets darker. And this is important for planets and locations with bad weather. Another component is the new ground fog. It follows the terrain up to a specified elevation for different locations. It is also fully integrated into the atmosphere. It receives volumetric shadows from clouds and terrain. It reduces the light scatter into the view ray. And in this video, we are showing all the features combined together. In addition, we made many improvements to cloud shaping to allow for more variation and details. The shape noise blending, a vertical variation, has been improved a lot.
This is insane right here. The difference in the cloud shadows. That's pretty nuts. Like, there's so much more contrast now.
Also, we made improvements to shorten long distance read, and the tiling is less visible.
The ground fog looks good too. I can't wait to see how this translates to like when you're on the, we're seeing a lot of it from the sky because it's easier to tell. I can't wait to see a planet that has thick fog, you know? Like, imagine a planet where you land and the fog is so thick that you get a ton less sunlight. It feels like nighttime on that planet all the time until you go up above the fog or the clouds. These people are such sci-fi nerds. You know they're going to do something like that. Like, they made a cloud city. The sort of stuff they can do with this is so cool. And I think somebody mentioned it in chat. This feels kind of like it is a big part of the move from CPU to GPU focused. Kind of like, do they talk about the Vulkan renderer during this talk? I can't imagine they don't. I'm pretty sure they did, but I don't remember. But this is all part of like Vulkan coming in, right? Gen 12 was the base layer to eventually let them do more of this kind of stuff. I love it. Wonder why you guys are experiencing worse FPS now. Because 3.20 should have been the update that separated us from the 3.18 problems. Maybe it's a shaders problem. Oh my gosh, see, that's nuts. That is crazy. Like, the clouds in this game, honestly, have been... They've always been good. But, like, this has always been a huge problem. I mean, ever since they introduced them to the game, people were like, you know, this kind of throws off the experience. It sort of takes you out of it. And then... boom! It's still a little bit of it there. You can see it on the tips of the clouds. But this is fantastic optimization. Now we just got to figure out how to let our games run at this FPS with this.
And best of all, we're going to include all these new features and improvements in the next 3.22 release. Okay, thanks.
So I'm thinking 3.22 is first patch next year. I don't think they'd get it in December. At least that's what I was thinking to be. I was thinking we'd get a 3.21.2 or 3 in December as our last patch of the year. What do you guys think? You think they're going to try and get it in December? They mentioned a Q4 patch, but that could always be 3.21.2, right? Because maybe they want to get the replication layer in, and they'll just include all this stuff in the replication layer separation update. But I don't know, unless they've said anything for sure on it. I was just thinking that there was, because we know for sure, absolutely, that there will be a 3.21 point something with the replication layer update. If that doesn't come out for November, then I think it'd have to be in December. And I don't think that's a bad thing, because they can put a bunch of features into 3.21.2 or 0.1. We've seen, I mean, remember what they did with 3.17? I'm happy for your optimism, though. I'm happy to fall on the more pessimistic side of the line for once. Let's see what happens, though.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, they definitely said end of this year for some features. Just depends on which feature that might come in. And that's the funny thing is, like, some of them said end of year, some of them said a certain patch, but none of them really correlated the two. So we don't know what either of them mean. Well, except for end of the year. It's pretty obvious.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Mike Snowden. I'm the Director of Visual Effects.
And I'm Ali Brown, I'm the Director of Graphics and Procedural Tech.
Thank you very much. Really happy to be here, really excited to show you. We're going to be showing dynamic fire in StarEngine.
If anybody can find a confirmation that they said 3.22 was coming this year, please feel free to post a link in chat. I didn't hear that, but that'd be a pretty big revelation.
Yeah. So dynamic fire is a driver for gameplay in both FPS and multi-crew experiences. It creates emergent sandbox gameplay, and it can be used by designers to craft very dangerous scenarios for players. And as you can see from the video, it gets very intense. Okay, so how do fires start in StarEngine? Well, there needs to be a source of ignition, and there are multiple ways in which it can occur. For example, weapon impacts or misfires, explosions or damaged items, and the player needs to be alert to their surroundings with fire an ever-present threat. If a fire does break out, you're going to see it dynamically propagate through the area, causing damage to environment and player. And at this point, the player needs to limit the damage, of course, by extinguishing the fire in any way that they can. So when doing so, they're going to need to wear protective clothing to protect them from extreme heat. They're going to need to wear a closed helmet to protect them from smoke inhalation, poor oxygen levels. And there's actually multiple ways the fire can be extinguished, including the removal of heat, for example, using the fire extinguisher, which is my personal favorite. It's a lot of fun doing that.
Funny moment. Can I just say, this is how, like, deprived I've been. This is how used to, like, previs and concept art I am. I saw this picture, and for those of you who were at citizencon or watched it, this was the first time we saw the new HUD or anything new on the screen Fire extinguisher, damage indicator, compass, stuff on the corners, stuff on the sides. All this was new. So I saw this and I was like, is this just previs? Is this just concept? I've been citizencon before. What is this? What are we looking at? So this was a nice progressive revelation that this was actually real stuff. And we were seeing proper gameplay this year. So they did such a good job with that this year.
For example, locking off the area, venting the oxygen, creating a vacuum. Or simply, the fire's burned so fiercely that it's done everything it needed to do. There's nothing left for it to destroy. And if you let it get this bad, it's probably time to consider repairing your ship.
Okay, so how do we achieve this from the technical perspective? Well, the first thing the artists and designers do is they mark up their scene to tell us what physical properties that each surface is made from, whether it's wood or metal. But not only on the surface, we have to describe what is behind the surface. You might see a metal panel on your spaceship, but has it got cladding or wiring behind it? It's important we know all this so we know how flammable it is. Then after this, we have to define all the physical properties that go with these surfaces. So, for example, what the mass is, the energy density, combustion temperature, air-fuel ratio. And we use all these physical properties and we sum them up in each voxel, which is a 1 by 1 meter cube. And then once we have these voxels, this forms the basis of our simulation. So then first thing we do is we look for sources of ignition and then we're off. So here's our debug mode.
All right. Before we get in, before we get into this, let's take a little dive back. Yeah, this is why we come here. Let's get some history. Fire has been in the works for a while. Which one's Fire? Here we go. This was June 18th, 2020. This is one of those features that we got a lot of updates on, and after some point, the general statement would be, "Oh yeah, Fire. We know about that." Nobody really what is that going to be? Okay, whatever. It was kind of a background thing, but it was always getting updated, so it was always on our minds. Here's one of the first updates on this stuff, so you can see just sort of where it came from.
To the shouts of the workers all around. And if that's not hot enough for you, on our last sprint report, we showcased the early explorations of fire propagation tests for Star Citizen and Squadron 42, and we're back with another update. Now, after starting with voxels, the VFX team is now laying the groundwork for a functional entity-based prototype that can track things like temperature, fuel amount, fire and smoke intensity per entity, and incorporate those into systemic propagation. What you're seeing here now is a fire volume that starts at the ignition point and grows from there, using entities that allow for mesh spawning, which will then in turn allow fire and smoke particles to spawn directly from the surface of an item's geometry. The team's next step is allowing propagation from voxels to entities and vice versa. But honestly, this still just kind of looks like a pyromaniac's paradise to me. Speaking of pyromaniacs,
and here's some of the first, oh my god, these are some of the first shots of pyro. I forgot we got these back in Inside Star Citizen.
We may have to revisit the assessment before all is said and done.
The freaking difference, man. Oh gosh, they made such huge improvements. All right, so you guys saw that early rendition of Fire. I actually think I have one more. Here's one more that they did. This was more of a previs demonstration. This is what they were originally going for when it came to Fire. They went a little bit of a different direction, but take a look at what it looks like. This is back in 2021, July 2021, so about 2.5 years ago.
Wrapping up our look at VFX this week, the team has returned from a brief hiatus away from fire propagation to create their version of a concept. A cinematic look dev, if you will, at the goals for fire propagation utilizing the tech features and progress already in hand. What you see here is a basic electrical fire in a relatively high-tech environment, exploring the type of propagation effects the team are currently pursuing. Now, as a test exclusively for how the fire moves and spreads throughout the ship, there are still a number of limiting visual factors here, like the still outstanding shader work that will one day make the fire feel even more alive than it already does. As the fire moves across the white surface that is flammable, you can see it dripping down to ignite the same surface below, while interacting with the black, glass-like surface on the ceiling that is understandably resistant. Combined with the heat and noxious gases affecting players via the actor status system, it's an exciting look ahead at some of the new dangers and hazards players will encounter and have to deal with on a regular basis as Star Citizen's development continues. But before we let you go, let's jump ahead and see what happens when you ignore the fire and let it go about its business for about half an hour.
So this is what to remember. Keep this in mind, guys, when we go back to watch the stuff they're introducing to us now. Let's see how closely it matches to this sort of visual concept they created. Because I think that's pretty key when it comes to Star Citizen. A lot of once you get past the whole scam argument, I think a lot of times valid criticism is that they introduce things and then they don't really follow through with them, because everything takes so long. But I think something that is worth noting is that when they do finally get to stuff, a lot of times it's super consistent with what they said at first. So I think it's worth, taking a look, see what this finally looks like after what we just saw.
It shows us what was going on in the simulation and is what we use to track it. And you can see these squares enlarging to show us where the fire is spreading. For each of these voxels, we're tracking the fire, the temperature, fuel remaining, the amount of smoke, and the fire is propagating via convection and radiation, which are both accurately simulated. And it's consuming the gases and producing the knock-on products as well as it goes. And because we're using a proper simulation, like Mike mentioned, when you vent a room, not only are you removing the oxygen and putting the fire out, but if the temperature remains the same, if oxygen is reintroduced, the fire will reignite and it will continue burning, just like it would in real life.
It's pretty immersive. That's like immersive sim kind of stuff. Prey, Deus Ex. I really like that. Like it's gonna happen naturally how you'd expect.
So what's next for this? So our focus has been on interiors, in particular spaceships, but all interior spaces really, and this voxel grid really helps us solve that problem. Our next focus is going to be on planets. Obviously, they represent a slightly different challenge, the vastness of them. We have to transfer this over the network and simulate it slightly differently, and we also have to render it at scale. But the way we've done it, the core tech we've used, we should be able to scale this up quite easily. So that's going to be our next focus.
Okay, so how do we create realistic dynamic fire visuals in StarEngine? Well, we start with the simulation, as just described by Ali, and this gives us the data we need to drive the visuals. Then we bring in the burn shader. So this can be applied to static environments, and we have a lightweight version of the shader for entities, which is kind of based on the dirt shader and wear. Then we've got the glow, which is an animated surface decal shader for static environments. This is where we start to bring in some nice motion. And then we bring in the GPU particles, which are spawning from voxels and in screen space. Obviously, these are doing a lot of the work visually. Then we bring in the lights. These are spawned for clusters of voxels as opposed to per voxel as an optimization, a cluster being a representation of voxels close to each other. And then we bring in the fog. So this is height-laid volumetric fog. The smoke fills the room, and it goes up to the ceiling before filling the rest. And we're simulating that. So to finish, we're going to take a look at all of that put together in the game. Thank you.
Honestly, even this, I didn't know if it was real or not. People loved this. You just gotta save the Pico. You just gotta save the Pico. But seriously, I saw this, and again, I was like, is this previs? Is this a video that they rendered just to show off what they want it to look like? It took so long for me to finally realize what was going on. But I thought this was cool. Somebody asked about what's burning. Even though like the walls are metal, a lot of times you might be insulated or covered or have some sort of a finish on the bottom that burns. But also, once things get too hot, they just start burning. I don't think it's hot enough in there. It looks like it's only they only say it's 22 degrees for them, so that seems pretty cool. But once a ship gets hot enough, it'll burn.
Thanks very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Oh, this was much better live. The speakers, the size of the screen, everything made it insane to be actually there.
I'm here to talk about water in StarEngine. So, water is a huge part of both of our games, Star Citizen, Squadron 42, and we wanted to give it a major upgrade. We were going to set 3 ideas that we wanted to impart on our water. We want it to look as good as possible, obviously. We want it to look realistic. We want it to be beautiful. We want it to be in motion constantly. It should always be moving and always be reacting to everything around it, whether that be players or objects or vehicles. And we wanted this to work on the whole scales of all of Star Citizen, all the way down from footprints in puddles to enormous ships crashing into the ocean. I'm going to talk about our updates to the water rendering first, and then we'll move on to that other stuff I discussed. So first of all, the water shaders, particularly the ocean and the river ones, were in dire need of a major upgrade. They were currently using a technique called deferred shading, which is really fast and fantastic for opaque objects, but does not translate well for transparent ones, which of course water is.
Nope.
So the first step that we made was to transition to forward shading. That allowed us to introduce more physically based techniques, such as proper lighting, reflection, and refraction. It allowed us to integrate the atmosphere properly into our water lighting setup. And it also meant that we could get more fun techniques, such as wave crest backlight scattering.
We love fun.
Adding better foam rendering.
Really like fun.
Includes halftone blending, surface haze, and much more detailed bubbles on the individual bits of foam. I've got some examples of that here. In this particular screenshot, you can see the icebergs in the near frame. You can see we're refracting the iceberg underneath. It's correctly refracted. In the mid frame, you can see that the iceberg is reflected back onto the water. That is now accurate. We weren't doing that properly before. Here you can see our accurate water lighting from this really beautiful screenshot of the Gladius over the water. I love this one. So this is the objects under the water being
that looks really
correctly lit,
good.
which is new. And then we are applying the lighting changes from the specular highlights on the surface, and also considering the lighting from the suspended particles in the water, depending on how deep and dense the water is, which gives us this really beautiful effect. This screenshot just looks good, but what is going on is that it's demonstrating that the atmosphere and the water are sorting properly. This looks like everything is normal, but it's challenging to implement with forward-rendered water and proper ray-marched clouds like we have in-game. Props to Alan, who works on all of this. I did the next bit. And here we can see the wavecraft light scattering. See how the sun is coming across the back of those waves? It's lighting up the suspended particles in them. It just looks gorgeous. Here we have the multi-layered foam.
He's so happy.
And from a distance, we have both surface foam and subsurface foam rendering correctly.
That looks so cool.
Really, really nice.
I can't.
I've just got a video here before and after, first of all.
I am so surprised at what they made with the water simulation. I didn't expect it to look this good. I know he's going to do a before and after, but why don't we go back and see what this is the same guy. Let's see what he was originally doing with this work, where he started and where he's come. This is back in January 21. This was the first time we saw him. He came on and kind of introduced us to the water simulation and created rivers for the first time ever. Here's what they look like.
So by borrowing a slightly more lush preset from a different planet, we can see that we can create this really effective look around the rivers with far more trees and ground cover, just to really sell the idea that this is a river that has been here for thousands of years and is flowing through the hills of Microtech. So now that we've added in this ecosystem around the river, it really sells and looks like a river flowing through the hills of Microtech. This looks much more like something that's been here for thousands of years, instead of just a bit of water that's trickling down some hills. Obviously, when the artists take a pass at this, they'll be able to get some much more suitable foliage and vegetation, instead of having this awkward merge between snowy trees and beautiful lush foliage. But the fact that we've got the tools to do this, and we can do it procedurally just with a few clicks, means that these rivers could be cropping up soon on the planets. As a reminder, this is a working prototype, not a finished product, and these are all engineer art choices rather than artist art choices. I can imagine someone screaming at me for the fact that we've got some beautiful kind of tropical trees here versus some snowy pines in the backdrop. But the fact that we can modify the ecosystem around these rivers means that we're going to be able to create some really convincing looking ecosystems.
So, here's one more shot. Yeah, this is the story of Star Citizen. This is 3 years ago, almost 2 years ago now. and this is how it goes. You know, somebody builds something, they prototype it, they build a tool, they try it out, it works on live, it's super buggy, super glitchy. We complain about it for a year. They fix it up a little bit, still a bit buggy, but now they've put it in more places. And then finally, we get to what we're seeing now at CitizenCon.
This is our lakes on Stanton 4. Next we have water volumes on Horizon. There you go. And this last demo, this is a Clio on the Stanton system. This is what it currently looks like in game, and I think you'll agree, pretty dramatic difference. So the next bit that I want to talk to you, that me and the team at Planet Tech and Graphics have been working on, is of course water surface simulation. This has been an absolute pleasure to work on. So we had a few aims for this. We wanted it to be multi-input. We want physics to influence this. We want our MFX system to influence this. We want bullets. We want everything. We want high concurrency. You guys, it's a sandbox game. You're going to break it. You're going to stick 1,000 picos in our puddles. It's got to work. And it's got to be scalable. It's got to work from the tiny scales to the footprints in the puddles all the way up to, as I said, giant ships crashing into the ocean. So the technique that we chose for this is a form of surface wave propagation. It's GPU-based, it's highly realistic at a low cost, and it can be scaled for waves of different amplitudes. So we can have all of that built right in just by adjusting a few constants. I've got a demonstration here. We're going to have the player walking through the puddle. As you can see, as he steps, you get a bigger ripple. But even as he's stepping, the toe is being dragged through the water and moving the water accurately. This is not...
Yeah, some of these videos have a bit of like a recording problem. Try to work around them as I can, but I think this one's frozen for a bit.
I'll cop out. We're doing this in 3D. You see as I'm jumping. And then this next demo, we're going to fire some bullets. This is a bit loud, this one. Right, the one more thing that we had to look at. So it's all well and good, this working on a puddle, but Star Citizen is not made of puddles. It's made of oceanic planets. It's made of everything. We needed to make this multi-scale. So we wanted the water near and far, not just in a square around the camera. We wanted lots and lots at once. The solution we picked was a multi-region water sim. Now, this was really, really tricky to get right, but I really think we have now. Which basically means that we can dynamically allocate all of the simulation regions depending on what is colliding where and what resolution we need at what parts of the screen. We can optimize this very heavily to make sure that you get what you want to see at the right time. We still need to get that information onto the water, though, and that's a bit trickier. So what we devised is yet another set of regions. Now, the regions are slightly different. The simulation regions need to happen wherever something is contacting the water, and that needs to happen regardless as to whether you can see it, because if there's a collision going on there, I look away, and then I look back. If it stops going and has to restart, that looks bad. Whereas the water, we only need to know the total result when it's actually in view. So we have these new regions which cover all water in view. And the beauty of this is that we can use this for multi-input and multi-output systems. Anything can influence our water, whether it be the simulation, whether it be weather, whether it be VFX. And then anything can be affected by water now. So the water rendering reads from this. But then we can also spawn VFX particles from wave crests. We can add screen space effects. We can have a line across your visor. We don't have this yet, but it's accurate to the displaced water in front of you. We've got this technology now, so we can use it to influence any of our work going forward. And here's a really good video of some of it in action. I'll just let that play. This is the debug mode.
While this is playing, can somebody describe or explain these regions to me? This is actually something that I think I struggled to get the significance a bit more of, but these regions seem very important to the simulation.
It looks really nice, really happy with this one. So what I'm going to do in a second is I'm going to turn on the debug mode so you can see where the regions are. You see we've got these gray boxes. They light up green when there is a hit inside the box. We've also got different sizes going on. If you look near the shore there's a big cluster of text. That is a whole bunch of other regions because there's some stuff floating there causing little ripples that we can't actually see. And as you see, these scale properly. We can add the results from multiple sizes of simulation together, and they influence and interact with one another accurately. You see those big waves crashing over the little sim there. It works pretty nicely. I've gone ahead of my subtitles, but I'll just let that video play out.
It looks amazing. I didn't expect something that detailed.
So, what does that look like when we bring it all together? What's it going to look like in game? Now, you did see a little bit of this in the StarEngine trailer, but actually, I think this video does a little bit more justice to it. So I'm just going to let that play out for you.
It still looks a little bit overly ripply,
Second.
but I mean,
Start to happen behind us there.
I don't care. It's still I wouldn't have expected this anyways.
On the glass, thrown up from the water sim. This is what I'm talking about using multi-output. And that's us. Thank you so much, citizencon. Handing back over to Ali.
Okay, so it just splits up the water simulation to be more easily computable. Water do be like that. It do. It move.
Hello again. So, I'm here to talk to you today about a few other graphical things we've got coming in. I'm really proud of the work we've done on the fire and the water. They both look amazing features. I'm going to talk to you about a few smaller features and a few longer-term R&D features we're coming in on the visual side. This first one, something we wanted for cinematics and telling a story, but
Star
also
tiers.
tie into our active feature system, which is to get the face to tell a little bit more story on our characters. So this blood, sweat, and tears system is something we implemented recently, and it allows us to use a GPU particle simulation, which we project onto the face, and then we integrate it into the skin shader so we can get realistic reflection and refraction of water on your face. And we even make the skin go a little bit redder to simulate the extra blood flow when you're tired or upset.
So I'm guessing this is going to be kind of one of those things that's like sort of like bed sheets. This I think this is probably a standard feature for a lot of different games, right? Cinematic games like this, something like Horizon or really PlayStation AAA games, I think focus a lot on these more cinematic elements, and I bet this is the kind of thing you'd build out for cinematics, but CIG being CIG is taking it, and trying to use it for more than one use case. So they're linking it into like the actor status system and stuff, which, again, I think probably isn't too crazy a thing. But much like bed sheets, it's something they're focusing on that probably doesn't get focused on too often, so it comes off a little bit strange. But I think it's cool. I think, especially that it links into the actor status system.
Animation is completely dynamic. We have complete control over everything. We can keyframe every single tear if we want to, and we can even simulate blood, like here. So next thing I want to talk about is our scope shader. Design came to me telling me that they really wanted to up the game with our rifle scopes. They weren't quite good enough. They didn't really feel realistic for them, and they thought it was a real core part of the first-person shooter experience. So to give you an idea of what we used to do, we used to use these type of fake scope meshes, which you see here, which is where we type of slice the scope in half so you can see through it. And sometimes we put these big black planes around them to obscure your vision. And we put a bit of glass on the front of it, but there was nothing really to tell you that it was a lens. So we've worked on a new scope shader, which is now going to be on all of our scopes moving forwards. And I'll give you a quick show of what that looks like in game. So on the first scope here, we're going to see it's got an infinite projected red dot scope sight. We've got lens distortions. You can see this little refraction and bending of light on it. You can see it works when you don't have to be actually holding the rifle for it to work. We've got a correct emulation of eye relief on the scope. So we have the blur, distortions, chromatic aberration.
This is, again, something I didn't know if they were going to do, right? Because we've talked about attachments a lot in the past. They introduced scopes. We got a few, and then they kind of improved them. Just like the rivers, we got a few. They worked okay. They kind of improved them over a year or two, and then they sort of didn't talk too much about it. So it was like, what? Are you guys going to get that proper zoom effect? Is this actually going to look good like the other FPS? And this was really satisfying to finally see and know for sure it was happening.
And has support for EMPs. If you get an EMP, you're going to have the display is going to get distorted. So we're quite proud of this. We think it's going to give a much better, more realistic simulation of the scopes in the game. And I think I've kind of mentioned before, but it's not a fake effect. It applies to our scopes no matter where they are. You don't have to be using the scope. You could look down somebody else's scope and see the same thing. It's fully integrated into it, so it's really quite proud of that. Next feature I want to talk about, hopefully if any of you have a HDR monitor and you've been playing 320, hopefully you've given a go of the HDR feature. We're really proud of this. It looks really good. And we've got some great feedback from you guys as well. There's been some strong feedback about we want extra black level controls, so we're going to be adding that for you. So make sure you can tweak the image exactly how you want. And there's a great user guide on Spectrum as well if you want to know how to get the best out of it, because it's not always a straightforward text to get the best out of. Just to give you an insight of how this works, we've got something called Unified Tone Mapping Curve, and this is the process where we map the real-life colors of real-life intensities of light onto what your monitor can display. And rather than having an SDR mode and HDR mode, we have like a smooth system where we can blend between SDR and HDR depending on the peak brightness of your monitor. We also pay a lot of attention to make sure we preserve the colors and the hues to keep an accurate image for the artist, and especially for skin tones. We don't want them turning red or white or doing everything bizarre. Just one thing to mention, we've got some content adjustments that will be ongoing. We've got a lot of content in Star Citizen. It takes a little bit of time to make sure we balance everything so it doesn't look too dim or look like a supernova. Next thing I want to mention, temporal upscaling. This has been something that's been asked for a long time, and we're proud to finally get it into your hands. We've got 3 different techniques we're going to be implementing. We've got CIGs, we've got our own temporal super resolution solution called TSR. We've got AMD's Fidelity FX Super Resolution 2, and we've got NVIDIA's DLSS 2 as well. They each have different characteristics and hardware requirements and trade-offs, so it's important to get you all 3 so you could have a choice of what you want to look. On the left here, I've just got a zoom in from one of our outposts. That's no anti-aliasing for people that really love to see jagged edges. The center one is our TSA, which is what you've got in the current release today. And on the right-hand side is TSR without doing upscaling. And this is going to be replacing the TSA solution. And this gives us better quality and more stable image and hopefully much less ghosting. We can use our TSR to do upscaling. Here's the example of how it looks at each resolution.
I'm guessing it's going to be very good that they're able to do the upscaling natively. Probably a great optimization.
And similar results from AMD's FSR. And some numbers here, which I'm sure you can pour over later, but basically we can get about 2 times GPU performance if you're interested in using the upscaling technique. Obviously, if you're CPU limited, you might not get quite them numbers. It depends on your machine. We also intend to look at frame generation techniques like FSR-free and DLSS-free, but these are going to come a bit later. We're going to focus on GPU performance, getting that up first. Frame generation isn't really applicable unless you've got a really good performance first. Some other quick updates. We've got the screen space shadows as added to Alpha 320. It gives us some extra detail in our shadows across characters, and it's particularly on planets, it helps a lot. And we've also got a new texture and mesh streaming engine that helps us get as much possible detail as we can onto your VRAM on your GPU. And it does something we call load balancing. It will scale dynamically for your GPU to make sure we can get the absolute best possible results. We've also got some more streaming improvements coming in the next release. Just to give you a quick show of what the screen space shadows mean, here we've got a planet with no shadows. I think it's Microtech. The shadow maps, you see these, the normal shadow maps that fill in half the scene. But then when we get the screen space shadows, you look in the top of the screen or in the flowers, they type of fill in the detail for the rest. They really help type of bed the scene in and stop these things looking and floating. Next up, I just want to talk about planets for a little bit. It's something I get asked about a lot of what's happening next with planets. So we've got quite a lot of R&D in progress. First thing, we've got 2 new pieces of tech being started recently. First is virtual terrain texturing. It's quite a technical detail, but what this means for you is we're hopefully going to get much less popping or no popping at all. And we're going to achieve this by moving all the calculations to the GPU. And we'll be reusing the same type of patch-based system that Will talked about in his water presentation. And it should give you major CPU savings as well. So we're quite looking forward to getting this in. Another benefit is that it's going to give us the ability to add more complicated logic on, so we can type of do more diverse and interesting terrain, like things like, you know, we don't have beaches at the moment, we'll be able to achieve that. And there's other similar things where, based on the local conditions, we're able to do more advanced decision making. Next thing we want to look at, which is probably the thing we get asked about the most, is our scattering system, which is what's responsible for putting all the trees and the rocks down in the world. We're going to, again, move this to 100% to the GPU, and that should let us have vastly longer draw distances right up until the horizon and much better performance. So we'll finally get rid of the dreaded pop of trees coming in.
I think one of the biggest questions I have is why so many things were dependent on the CPU before. Is that just a product of what CryEngine used to be, or is that normal for all games that you have to do extra work to utilize the GPU? Kind of a game dev thing, I guess.
We also have to integrate it with our harvestable system, the resource system, and the awesome fire system you just saw a minute ago. Another point is it's going to be a hierarchical-based system, which what that means is we'll be able to use nearby vegetation or rocks to influence what other vegetation rocks can grow or will show up. And this lets us produce much more complicated rule sets, so we can do things like have a tree that maybe underneath it doesn't have any grass, or maybe certain trees come together in clumps. And we'll get a much more natural distribution of vegetation. And final thing we want for planets is we want to be able to build them much easier, much faster, and we want to make sure they are truly unique. At the moment, our planets are unique. However, they are built from type of tile sets, like pre-built things that get mixed and matched together and blended in complicated ways so you don't see the repetition. But it's not truly unique, not in the same way that the Grand Canyon might be, or the River Nile, or Mount Everest. And that's what we want. So to get that, we need to replicate the complicated natural processes on Earth.
Now,
like geology.
we've actually seen what this model looks like. We've seen what the height map builder looks like. This is just in general showing how you can change up the height maps very quickly to create custom planets. We've seen this in various applications, but this is really what he's talking about here. Putting these height maps into tiles and procedurally placing them across the planet to create random looking planets. This is how Starfield did theirs as well, or at least it's similar to it. And it works well, but like he said, it doesn't actually make full-on macro geographical features that like make sense.
That the Grand Canyon might be, or the River Nile, or Mount Everest. And that's what we want. So to get that, we need to replicate the complicated natural processes on Earth, like geology, climate, erosion, and these things aren't trivial. So we've got three options. We've got offline tools, Houdini, Terragen, things like this, where you could simulate all these processes in the engine. But we've started some R&D a few months ago on whether we can use machine learning to do some of this. So just to give you a quick idea of how that would work, or how it could work, if you just start with some random input here, it's just like some noise. We run it through a temporary simulation, so we can type of get a more reasonable approximation of simulation at different altitudes and latitudes on Earth. And then what we do is we categorize all this into different biomes. So based on the temperature and moisture, you'd find out what is a desert, what is a forest. And this part is crucial. So this is the input for our machine learning algorithm. We could come up with this image any other way. You could hand paint it as an artist, or we could just randomize the noise to get a different set of images. And then what we do is we take the large data sets we already have from Earth, from Mars, and from the Moon, and we train it on exactly the same distribution, so biomes, so forests, grasslands, and things like this. And by training it on exactly the type of data we get in reality, we can take this and then push just that, and then we can get these lovely height maps out of it that tell us a really realistic distribution. You can see here, this is a height map, so the black areas are low. You can see all the little rivers and valleys, and this had 0 R input aside from this image, which is a very nice result. It's early days. This is based on something called a custom diffusion neural network. It's, like I said, it's pre-trained on Earth data, and it's been built up in patches so that it just doesn't become too expensive to build. And the little circular patches get like added together, and to avoid any seams in the image.
So, I mean, like they're using machine learning, but as far as I guess the industry and fun clickbaity tech headlines would go, this would essentially be them confirming they are using AI to build out their planets faster, right? And probably eventually systems. So they're definitely looking at very real and immediate ways to start scaling up the production of these planets pretty quickly.
Visualize it, just put some colorization on it to show you where like snow and beaches might be, and just wrap it around a planet to give you a better sense so it doesn't look quite so abstract. Yeah, but this is very early days, this stuff, but we're hopeful this will be helping the future of how we build planets quickly and efficiently. Thank you. So the last thing I wanted to talk about today is our Gen 12 renderer and Vulkan. This has been ongoing for quite some time, taking a lot longer than we would have liked, but we're finally getting to the end of this long journey. For those who don't know, the reason this was being implemented is largely for performance. We're going to be getting at least 2 times better performance on our CPU submission for rendering, which is often the bottleneck for the game, so that will directly, hopefully, translate to performance improvements. We also get better control of memory with advanced GPU features like resizable bar. And it also opens the door for some things like ray tracing and new mesh shaders. So we've got a video of a Vulkan running that's live captured. So I can't remember which ship is this, but it's it's all working fine now. There's a couple of hitches in performance, so we can't quite release it yet, but we're looking into them, the last few performance issues and stability issues, and hopefully we'll be releasing it soon. So, like I said, one of the things we really were interested in by implementing Vulkan was to get support for new hardware features, and one of the big ones was ray tracing. So with that, I want to hand you over to Ben, who's going to talk about some of our lighting research.
Yeah, the Gen 12 stuff, they probably didn't focus on it enough here, but I think that is the key to our frame rates. Vulkan API and really the optimizations they can do with that. I wonder why they didn't touch on it too much, but okay. On to ray tracing. It is more exciting anyways, right?
Hi, I'm Ben Parry, and this is Global Illumination. So, as Ali just said, moving over to the Vulkan renderer, and now that that's fully online, we've got access to hardware ray tracing on the GPUs that have support for it. And the best thing to do with hardware ray tracing would be to create a new, updated global illumination system for us to use. Now, I'm here to give you a fairly early preview of the work that we've done so far, but first off, I'm just going to simplify some things and ask, what is global illumination? Well, you can break the lighting in a game down to 3 components. First off, you've got direct lighting. That's not global illumination, but that's the sun lights in the level, that kind of thing. Next up, you've got diffuse global illumination. Now that's like a whole hemisphere, like a soft lighting that affects that takes from the entire scene and lights up the pixel. And then finally, you've got glossy GI and reflections. That's like your shiny surface glints, your mirror reflections, that kind of thing. And now all of those combine together to form one glorious penguin. Now,
Glory.
Now for the rest of this presentation, we're specifically talking about this guy, the diffuse penguin. Glossy GI has actually been disabled in all the videos. Even the old system videos don't show the glossy GI here, just to aid the comparison. First off, we've got a video from Chris Campbell, who's going to make us look cool.
I think the most noticeable part, at least in that one, was the red bouncing off the ship up into the ceiling. It's really cool, and I guess it's not something I generally notice unless it's a demonstration like this, but when it's happening, it makes it look so much better. Man, that light bounce is crazy. Got you guys on that volume adjustment at that part. Yeah, that looks great. And like, this makes a huge difference for a game that takes place in space, right?
So next up, the boring or the interesting bit. How are we doing it? How does the tech work? I'm just going to dig into that just a little bit. So we're closely based on AMD's recent paper, GI 1.0. We're probably going to build on top of that, but at the moment we're quite close to it. We ray trace against a simplified world so that we get like smoother lighting for the, since it's a diffuse scene, we want a sort of diffuse, smooth signal. This also means that we get more rays per millisecond, which is always good. And we do generate a lot of probes. So the new system is generating, well, for comparison, the old probe was about 1 probe per room, and the new system is about 25,000 probes that are all on screen at the same time. And we're going to see that now. So here's a scene that I've dramatized a little bit just to give trouble to the old lighting system. And this is what the ray tracing sees. So it's a simplified single color per object kind of thing. But then we've also got this kind of a 3D dictionary of average light values so that the light is kind of shared over things in a similar area. So going back to the scene, this is the old system. So you'd render a single image from the center of the room, blur it, and then slap it onto the entire scene. Now, as you can see, like the middle of the scene is about the right lighting, but everything else has got the middle of the scene's lighting. Like these red lights at the sides, they're basically drowned out by the table bounce.
There's seriously so much blue on like all these surfaces that are facing here.
That somehow made it across the room to them. So we want to replace that system with 25,000 probes, each one of them only providing light to a small area around themselves. And then we interpolate that to provide like a smooth bounce. And you can see already in the distance, like the red light is really bouncing up there. And then we add a screen space occlusion pass just to tidy up the edges on things. And there is
just completely gone. I mean, you can see it right here from both sides. Just tons and tons of blue in here. And then it's just gone over here. Like even the ground over here is more blue, where it's more red. Looks great. I don't know what you guys are saying, but it sounds like this is very impressive, especially with the software stuff. They're about to get to that, so we'll talk that in a minute.
So, what else does it do? Well, because it's real-time generation, it means we can do a real-time bounce, and we can do that with quite small areas. You can get like a really vibrant bounce that picks up off small objects in the scene. Ooh. And that means that the art team can really lean into like strong local variation on color. As again, we will see. So we'll do a side-by-side comparison on this one. As you can already see, like the spotlight's really like throwing stuff into the scene. This is just one light in the room. And we did have live updating.
The light bouncing is,
system, but
the colors on the walls are so cool.
Rather than this continuous smooth view. And finally, it means that we can do things like glowing surfaces can just illuminate the world without having to add special lights to fake it. So yeah, there's two really common cases in Star Citizen particularly that this is going to help with. First off, cockpit brightness. We capture at the moment the at the moment we capture that cockpit probe in a setup scene, and then we don't update it as you're flying around. So you're not going to get the sky color in, and you're not going to get the ground color in. And then we've got the opposite problem that I don't have a picture for this, but cargo bays, sometimes they're light, you land somewhere dark, you open up the doors, and now you've just got this weird little light room with nothing spilling out of it. So again, let's have a video. Oh yeah, so this is the old system. The sun's working, but you can see there's no sky, there's no ground lighting. By the way, I've turned off a lot of the cockpit lights so that you can see this. And then in the new one, you can already see the skylight is kind of helping a little, but then as you turn over, you get all the ground lighting.
Pretty nice.
And yet there's more. See, one of the concerns we had was that we didn't want to create a two-tier system. If people have got hardware ray tracing and it's working for them, that's great. But you can't really have the art team optimizing or seeing for one type of lighting and then having to optimize it for another type of lighting and having to trade off decisions about the two of them. So what we've been experimenting with is trying to create a new low bar that's higher than the old low bar, as well as creating a new high bar. And the idea for this is basically to take that single room environment probe system that we have been using, update it so that we can do live relighting on that, and then to sort of slot that in where the ray tracing would be while still keeping all of the other stuff, like the 25,000 probes and all that kind of stuff, can look at the old system and we kind of Frankenstein them together. So I'll show you what we've got so far for this. So this is just the old one and the new one so that you can see the problems. Like, just, it's overly lit, let's be honest. And now this is what Star Citizen would have looked like if we released it on the PS1. The sharp-eyed among you may have noticed also the ship is missing, but we can't do dynamic objects in this.
Didn't notice.
You'll be surprised. It doesn't seem to mind. And there we have software GI in the middle, which is, like I say, it was using the same 25,000 probe system, but not having to use any kind of hardware ray tracing.
Yeah, the software...
See, it's not a perfect match. It's not identical, but...
But it looks pretty good. I mean, like, the lighting is much more contrasty. I'm not the best eye for this kind of thing, but, and obviously, we're watching this on a YouTube video, but I feel like on the ceiling up here is where you can tell the most difference. I think it looks pretty good. Looking between these two, you can see like the darker shadow. It's lighter.
It's a lot more dynamic than the old system. And finally, I'm just going to show you a to-do list here. I don't have pictures because it's stuff we've not done. Glossy reflections. Obviously, we want to complete the picture, and for that, we need to handle glossy reflections. That's self-explanatory, really. I don't know what to say about that. Secondly, you've only seen it on opaque surfaces so far. The next step is to extend this so that it can support glass and water and all the other transparent things in the game. And beyond that, we've obviously got fog, we've got other atmospherics. We want to expand GI to make sure that it affects everything smoothly and equally. And the final thing is a Star Citizen thing. We've got giant scenes, we've got a ridiculous scale on some things, and we've got plans to make sure that this GI extends to handle that full scale. Anyway, that's all I've got to tell you now. I've been Ben Parry. Next up, we've got StarQuack with Chris Rain.
I mean, I think you guys have a good question. I don't know enough about this stuff to answer that. Is it worth investing in software ray tracing when 2-3 years from now most cards won't feature it? I don't know, but I'm glad that their solution is, it sounds like, hardware agnostic, which seems like a pretty important thing for this game going forward.
Hello, everyone. Hi. I am Chris Rain, and I would like to show you not one, not two, but 3 new physics of our physics engine. And I would like to start off by introducing StarCloth, our new character cloth simulation with a short video.
Actually, you know what? No, that's a good point, because we're all sitting here talking about everything we see, right? Every new thing that they're adding into the game, we're saying, oh man, well, what am I going to have to upgrade my computer to play this? Oh man, that's going to melt my computer. That's what all the jokes are, right? When you go and you look at chat with people who are reacting in normal game, like Asmongold, all the comments are like, yeah, but can computers even run it? So, no, I'll say that. Software ray tracing being another thing on the list that you can say, no, you don't have to upgrade your computer for this. I think that's solid, but that means other parts of the game probably have to be optimized to match it. So, the more people who can play on low-grade equipment, the better. I don't know if there are still non-ray tracing compatible cards being released, but if there are, I think it's reasonable to support those people. Especially because, man, Star Citizen is already going to be a tough game to run.
So this is just regular player movement. That was actually me playing. You can see the cloth collides with the ground. can see multiple layers of cloth that do not interpenetrate. Cloth gets influenced from wind and has accurate collisions with the player's body.
Star cloth.
We now have support for collisions from dynamic objects.
Just pushing around the gown.
You can play football.
So this is something we've seen before. You guys might remember this. Let's go back to 2018 when they first started introducing this stuff.
Well, hopefully that's not going to be a problem. Thanks, Sean. All right, so I'm going to talk about character cloth. As Sean has told you, the solver had been rewritten completely from scratch. Previously, we've had two different pipelines, two different solvers, and that's always like a pain in the... It's a big pain to maintain these two things. It needs like separate teams to do that, and like, yeah. So the unification is really a big deal for us. And let me tell you a little bit more about how the previous system worked that Sean has mentioned, this so-called pendulum simulation. So imagine like the characters, all our characters in the game, they have this internal skeleton, which is made up of joints or bones, as they're called. And these pendulums are essentially extensions of these skeletons. So they were used primarily to attach more kind of rigid, like simple objects, like for instance grenades, attach them to a body, or like a rocket launcher at the back of your back. And whenever you moved, this stuff like wiggled slightly around. And it wasn't originally not really supposed to be used for more complex, simulating more complex types of objects, such as cloth, shirts, capes, trench coats, whatever. So what they did was, like in earlier titles that used the system, they created ropes of these basically joined chains and created several of them and connected them together so they would form something like a sheet of cloth. But the resolution of these things was always very, very coarse, so it always lacked in terms of like fidelity. And now with this vertex cloth approach, you have the ability to put a lot more detail into these meshes, and that results in much better looking simulations. So as you can see here, which side is which? So vertex cloth, the new stuff is on the left, and you can see all these wrinkles going on, creases, folds forming dynamically, reacting to the animation of the player. The thing is, like in general, like in terms of character cloth, the problem with character cloth is that characters are much more dynamic than environments. So even though with a new cloth, our environment cloth can be more dynamic and can move about in the environment theoretically, primarily it will be curtains or tarps, flags, this kind of stuff. The cloth on a character needs to undergo much more stress because who knows what the player ends up doing with the character. They jump out of their ship and expect to land somewhere and their cloth still looking nice and neat. So for the physics solver, that's very demanding. So we're quite happy that this new solver is very stable. It doesn't explode. Sometimes, like for more extreme cases, you need to help the solver a little bit. And that's why we have these markup tools for. So
there's this goes on, and they kind of just talk about how this is being developed, and you can tell this stuff is a very early prototype. Honestly, we didn't, at the time, nobody thought it was going to be another 5 years before this truly was stable enough to go into the game. But at the time, they were really prototyping this stuff. I mean, they might have thought they were going to finish it sooner, but clearly it took them a lot longer than they expected. That being said, the fact that we're getting product that is as nice as this, I won't say it justifies the time, but it is really nice, that there's not really much of a downgrade from the stuff that they were looking at 5 years ago to what we're actually getting in game now. So let's go back to that and look again at kind of what they're bringing us finally.
in any outfit. StarCloth supports the full range of motion a human can make.
This animation's actually pretty good too, I thought.
To extreme poses. StarCloth is designed to be a first-class member of our physics engine. It interacts with everything we have to offer, from character movement over forces like wind, thruster backwash, explosion, to projectile impacts and collisions. It's efficient. It always updates at 120 FPS, regardless of the frame rate, and is hand-optimized. It's immersive and believable. It's a realistic simulation based on physical properties. It's high fidelity, high quality. We want to raise the bar with this. The visual geometry you see on the right is complex and not suitable for simulation. The visual geometry is made with visual quality in mind, and that does not translate well to simulation. So we decided to add the ability to use bespoke meshes that are made to simulate well and let their movement then deform the visual geometry. This allows us to share the same sim setup across multiple visual meshes, which is a huge productivity boost for tech art. We can seamlessly blend the simulation on and off, so we can disable the simulation at a distance. Back to the football. Everything that is dynamically simulated is able to interact with the cloth, from ships, over crates, boxes, and even footballs. We ensured that the collisions are accurate and believable. As you can see in the image, the football parts both layers of the gown. The cloth itself supports self-collisions, which means it will create folds and wrinkles, but not interpenetrate itself or other layers of cloth. The same applies to the static environment as well. The cloth will drape itself around the environment, so brushing up against objects will result in the behavior you expect. We added tapered capsules to improve collision detection accuracy. A tapered capsule is a capsule which has two different radii at the endpoints. Human anatomy is complex, and we need to accurately represent it for collisions. The traditional capsules we use on our ragdolls lead to jumps in the collision surface. Now, notice how there is a jump between the elbow and the lower arm, and another jump where the forearm connects to the hands. These jumps pose significant problems for our cloth simulation. If you look at the upper torso, you can see the collision proxies are actually completely hiding the cloth, and they're essentially completely useless. So now notice the difference on the same body represented with tapered capsules. We can now faithfully represent the hips, legs, and arms of the character. An additional benefit of tapered capsules is that the collision detection is significantly faster than with regular capsules. Currently, we're only using them for cloth collision detection, but in the end, we'd like to use them for everything. We simulate the cloth always at 120 FPS or 120 Hertz, regardless at which update rate the game is running at. We do this to be faithfully able to detect collisions with a fast-moving character. As we're simulating at a higher rate than the game updates, we have to interpolate the joint positions between updates we get from the game. At each simulation step, we perform collision detection, simulation, and update the cloth sim cage. Now, if the game is running at 120 FPS, we do one update for the cloth simulation. If the game updates at 60 FPS, like in the image, we simulate the cloth twice. Now, if the game runs slower, like at 30 FPS, we need to update the cloth 4 times. You can see this in the image. It becomes apparent that we need to make the cloth run as fast as possible, and we spent a great deal of amount of time optimizing this with various techniques, including handwritten vectorization and using every trick in the optimization handbook. The effort pays off because we can faithfully capture very complex movement and fast-moving characters, even at low frame rates, without any clipping or tunneling. Thank you. One area that poses a significant challenge for character cloth is when multiple pieces of garments layer on top of each other, like a tight-fitting jacket that lies on top of the pants, as you can see in the image above. This is a very difficult region to simulate properly because you don't have much space and the simulation collisions have to be absolutely accurate. This, what I'm going to show you, is a very subtle effect, but once you notice it, you cannot stop noticing it. I want to focus your attention to the waist region of the character. Here we tweak the simulation settings in real time to see the effect. Here you see a rendering with a high-fidelity cloth disabled. And here the same scene with it enabled. To be continued, tomorrow much more can be seen about StarCloth in the character.
You know, guys, I see this conversation going on in chat about optimization for this and card health or card length and stuff like that. But it is worth noting, people still play what these games were based on, right? I don't know how big the percentage of people who play those games are, but Wing Commander and Freelancer, Star Wars Galaxies, EVE, World of Warcraft, a lot of people play these games for a long time and go back to them, and I could totally see people trying to play older games on older hardware. Now, I don't have the numbers of how many people would be utilizing that stuff, but for somebody who has been so adamant on making sure that they're building the best kind of thing, I think it makes sense for them to also dip down and make sure they're covering the lowest common denominator if they want to, you know, brag about how it is the best. Better run the best, no matter what you're playing with. Although, that being said, you know, there's a certain level of money that you should probably spend on trying to help out those people. So that's an equation none of us know. But I think it is worth remembering people are going to play this on old computers. People who haven't played games in decades are going to try and play Squadron 42 because they've been waiting for success of things like this.
Advancement panel. Be sure not to miss out. Thank you. So, next up, star hair. Currently, we have the ability to simulate the effect of moving hair with joints that are essentially simulated pendulums. The hair is skinned to these joints, and when these joints move due to the pendulum simulation, the hair moves with it. This leads to a fast...
We can actually do a little... we could take a step back in time here. Let's see if we can find the original... Yeah, here's where they talked about hair. This is where they really set us up for our expectations for hair. And this is March 2019. So again, another long-term thing that we have known about, didn't get too much communication on, but knew was supposed to be coming. But again, didn't know exactly, you know, what the story about it was. And again, just like the rest of CitizenCon, I feel like it answered some questions that we've had for a while. Sorry, muted myself.
She wanted to be a little bit incognito, so she'd have like a hood to cover her face or her identity a little bit.
So with Pacheco's hair, the number one thing that we wanted to try was a very different style. First off, it gives her personality and makes her stand out, and it feels like it fits her to begin with. But also, we wanted to make sure that we were able to do that with our new hair tech.
I wanted to look special, and I wanted to not give her just a regular plain Jane type of hair. I wanted her to have a little bit of possibly hidden culture, and she looks badass, man.
So since this is all very work in progress with our hair pipeline, and we're trying to finalize that now, if it's not completed for 3.5, we're not going to let that stop us for the release of Pacheco in 3.5. So I hope that when players see Pacheco and that they're excited and that they get to see a new style, a new type of character. We have a lot of already bad guys. And
Spoiler alert, it was not ready for 3.5.
and this is going to add to that group, but we're excited to kind of bring a different flavor of bad guy to you guys.
So yeah, that was setting the expectation really, and at that point, I'm guessing they realized that the hair simulation was A, both underdone for what they wanted, and B, not worth the time at the time, with Squadron being not really completed. Now, that being said, what they showed there, I still think we haven't quite reached that. Specifically, hair like this is very different from the hair we're going to see today, and even the stuff that they sort of covered for more curly hair like this is still lacking a lot of the detail that makes it, you know, particular. So they've still got work to do, but now we're going to see kind of where they've come in the last 4 or 5 years.
Fast and believable movement of hair. However, the quality is directly correlated to the quality of the skinning, which is tedious for tech art to achieve for some complex hairstyles. Further, apart from gravity, the pendulum joints do not react to external forces like collisions or wind or explosions. So we asked ourselves, can we somehow improve upon this? And I'd like to show you some early prototype results of our research. This is an image of the raw geometry you saw in the previous image. You can see many strands of hair, and we thought to ourselves, maybe we can simulate all of these strands. This is a single strand isolated from the rest. As these are simple triangle meshes, we initially thought we could simply use our cloth simulation and simulate such a strand like a sheet of cloth. That didn't work out at all. It turns out hair does not behave like clothing.
Hold on a second. Can we go back to what we just looked at? I believe that's what we're seeing, right? These kind of look like, yeah, like little cloths instead of the splines that he's about to talk about. So that might be a big part of why they just didn't release it. They needed to redo a lot of this stuff.
Also, the sheer number of strands and their individual triangles and vertices are simply too much to simulate efficiently, even for our highly optimized cloth engines. We realized then that our artists are actually using splines to create these strands. And a spline is a smooth curve or line through space. You could see that in yellow. And we thought maybe we can just simulate these. They're much simpler. So, and hair simulations need to be able to maintain the original hairstyle. You cannot have the hair simulation change the visual appearance of a character. One of the reasons why using the cloth simulation for hair did not work out at all is that the cloth only simulates vertices and they have no concept of orientation. So you do not know how the next segment has bent in relation to your current segment. In other words, you cannot easily simulate twist with vertices alone. For splines, however, that is very easy to do. So all of this together allows us to simulate the strands according to the theory of Courserac rods. A Kosarat rod allows you to model the behavior of slender one-dimensional rods, exactly what our splines are, and simulate bend, twist, stretch, and shear, exactly what we need. Hair also needs exact collision detection to not intersect with the head, the ears, the cheeks, the jaw region. The video I'm about to show you is some very early prototype footage of how such a simulation actually looks like.
It's very fluid.
So this is a test of various head movements to see how the hair reacts. Hair simulation is one of the hardest things to simulate, especially in a real-time context, and very tricky to get right. We're actually simulating all the hair strands.
This was pretty crazy. That's nuts.
So we will have characters being able to run their hands through their hair.
Imagine the wild glitches this is going to cause in the live servers at first.
And have the hair react realistically. A barber simulation next. Actually, being a bald man, this was a very touching moment for me when I made this video. Thank you. Thank you.
So many mouth noises.
Next, I would like to introduce Maelstrom, our physically based destruction system. And I would like to do that with a video that I believe speaks for itself.
All right, so Maelstrom is an interesting one because they've always wanted to do damage systems amongst their ships. Damage was something we always knew was a thing. And there was wear and tear with guns and armor as well. Cargo, I guess, was kind of a given, but environments being destructible wasn't something I recall ever really being talked about. So it's very interesting to see this damage system applied to all these objects in the game. Again, I might be wrong, I might have missed it, but this is, I think, one of the few things that we're seeing that really kind of came out of nowhere earlier this year. And so I don't really have any references to it before, except for earlier this summer or other displays of the tech, so we can get right into this one.
See the water splashes?
Now, I don't think they really talked about how this happens for persistence and stuff. It does say PS and replication ready as a goal. So maybe things just regenerate over time. Really, I don't think there's many details on that here.
We want players' intuitive prediction of the effect a weapon or a collision has to actually happen in the engine or in the game. So we decided to move away from hit point pools or other abstract models to simulate damage, but rather have damage be calculated from a physical model and from the physical material properties of each entity. If something breaks off due to its structural integrity decreasing below a certain threshold, Maelstrom allows it to break off in a realistic fashion. If you shoot off a wing, the missiles and weapons on that wing should still remain attached. If the broken off part still has power, electric items should still function. This means Maelstrom was needed to be designed to work with a hierarchical setup to begin with. From the hierarchical representation of the geometry we want to break off to the same hierarchy on a higher level for items like power plants, lights, weapon systems, and so on. Maelstrom is persistence and networking ready. We designed it from the ground up to work with high latency situations, to persist and replicate easily. To achieve all this, we gave each physical geometry instance an identifier to be able to uniquely identify it within the universe. So your Gladius wing is your Gladius wing. We added physical material and damage properties that can now be replicated across the network. One of them, and that's the most important one, we call integrity. And this determines how much structural or internal integrity a physical geometry has. Integrity is modified from dissipating or rather absorbing energy from kinetic impacts or energy weapons, and also in the future from absorbing energy from external factors like extreme temperature or fire, as you've seen before. We also track which physical part or geometry belongs to which visual geometry and which high-level entity. So if the structural or internal integrity collapses, we know which visual geometry is affected and which item might be affected as well. So a power plant will cease to emit power or implode, explode. A weapon will cease to fire, and so on. To make things break apart, we create what we call breakable clusters. A breakable cluster is a set of physical geometry, the visual geometry, and the entities on top that can break off. Between breakable clusters, we create abstract cantilever beams to be able to model stress and strain. I'll go into more detail in that in a bit. Breakable clusters are hierarchical. They mirror the hierarchy of all attached entities involved. They also embed the hierarchy of all animated joints. And they also embed the hierarchy of all physical geometries. They essentially represent a ground truth of the entire hierarchy necessary to perform all our goals for Maelstrom. This image is showing a breakable cluster graph of the Gladius. I'd like to show one more video of Maelstrom before we continue.
That's pretty crazy.
We needed to find a good way to easily and efficiently determine when a breakable cluster breaks. We chose a well-established model from material sciences and structural engineering, cantilever beams. In essence, a cantilever is a structural member that has a fixed support and a free end. Forces experienced on the free end can be used to calculate the amount of stress the fixed support is enduring. The basic ideas behind that are best explained from a very simple example. If a ship were to collide with the horizontal part of the crane in the image, far from the vertical part, the fixed support would endure a higher stress as if the ship were to collide closer to the vertical part.
Distance times force.
But not only does the point of impact determine how much stress the cantilever beam experiences, also how large the surface area is connecting the
Man, I just realized I don't remember the equation for stress. Sad day.
The cantilever and the fixed support has a large influence on when a cantilever beam will break. In our case, this actually means we analyzed the cross-section of the intersection of the set of geometry from two breakable clusters to calculate the surface area. A wing attached to the body has a rather large connecting surface area compared to the surface area calculated for the stabilizers connected to the body. We then project forces from impacts and explosions onto these cantilever beams and calculate the stress the beams experience. Over time, this stress turns into strain, and if we reach a certain threshold, the beam snaps. The result, simple, efficient, and deterministic breakability. But this is not just about ships and buildings that you saw in the videos before. We want Maelstrom to be a systemic system that we can use on all types of entities. So here's some video of some test footage of AI shooting each other behind breakable cover and Maelstrom barrels.
Not gonna lie, they were better aims than me.
Physical material properties influence damage and breaking and have a direct influence to how things break and fracture. To achieve this, we added various properties: density, yield strength, resilience, thickness, toughness, Young's modulus. And this is more or less what I wanted to talk about Maelstrom,
Good old Young.
but I don't want to leave without showing one more video of what carnage Maelstrom can create.
That's good flying, guys.
So thank you very much. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Benoit.
Great. Thank you. All right. I am not this person, but I'm filling in with him. So far, I mean, do you guys think this is going to change your game up to now? All these new features? Hell yeah. Okay. So we've seen updates from fire, water, we've just seen force, we've seen sun and light. So the next thing that's left to build a ludicrous space game is audio. And so I'll leave you with Graham, who's going to show you some of the new audio enhancements we bring to StarEngine to make it even more realistic than it is now.
Hi CitizenCon, Graham here. Good to see you. Recently in the audio team, we've been looking at how we can create a greater...
At this point, I don't think I've seen anything. Yeah, we are past what I've seen of CitizenCon, so you might hear me get a little bit more excited now.
Psychological connection and emotional impact within our games through the use of improved audio technology. Audio can play a crucial role in the immersion of the player. And with that in mind, the audio code and technical sound design teams have been looking at all of our tech from the ground up. For example, when you're under threat, you should feel a real sense of danger. When you're armed, you should feel the dangerous power that you hold within your hands. Earlier this year, we showed you our resonance tech, which allows us to bring the action much closer to the player even when they're deep in the bowels of a ship and far away from where all the hits and the explosions are happening. But that's just one part of a much larger push to create a better, more immersive audio experience. With that in mind, let's take a look at some of the tech we've been working on. First, let's listen to some of our weapon sounds in action. They're a great simulation, but we wanted to take them further and express the sound pressure, the forces being exerted. Our new in-house audio effects, particularly the multiband compressor, tuned by our sound designers, give us this result.
God, the full auto LH86 is so cool. It's ridiculous, but it's so cool.
The compression serves to illustrate the power of the weapons and the effect that they have when going beyond the limits of the listener.
Ooh, yeah.
Let's show
The
you
echo
the same
seemed a bit
audio
much.
effects applied to the ship weapons, taking us from this to this.
Okay, sounding a little beefier now.
But it's not just about feeling powerful. Changes in audio can create a sense of danger, of being out on your own and under threat. Here's an example of ship combat. Sounds good, but what if we wanted a little more realism?
Huh? So are they deciding to, oh, jeez. Nice pause, dude. Wow. Are they deciding to, you guys know how they had sort of that idea before where if you got damaged enough, your ship would lose its simulation and you would lose the sound around you in the ship? Are they getting rid of that? Are they just saying we're going to go straight to this type of sound and we're not going to translate sounds through vacuum as much as we were before? So that'd be interesting. There was a dev post about this. Well, that's the thing. In lore, the idea is that your ship and helmet simulate sound. And then when that stuff gets damaged, they stop simulating the sound. I'm wondering if they're going that way or not. Maybe they'll talk about it. Or yeah, if you get EMP'd or something like that, it changes it to this sort of sound because you can't simulate the sound anymore. But maybe they say something about it. Let's see.
The audio propagation tech that we've been rolling out makes it easier to change the soundscape in real time, and a nice use of that technology is to provide a more realistic option. Here, your own weapons resonate through the hull of the ship. Only what's in the pressurized cockpit is heard clearly, and the threat level feels higher due to the isolating lack of enemy weapon and ship audio.
Means we're going to need a lot more ways to know we're being shot at, or at least very clear ways.
Making these changes creates space in the audio, both spectrally and temporally, making impacts seem bigger, more damaging, more of a problem for the player.
Okay,
This
I can hear that.
realistic mode isn't limited to the flight experience, it's applied appropriately to the game as a whole. Here's an FPS battle in a depressurized area. With realistic mode, we get that sense of isolation again, giving the location a different colour and adding variety to the audio experience. Player breathing and foley are exaggerated, and other sounds are transmitted through physical contact.
Sounds good. The sounds of getting shot are rough. The gun sounds really nice, though.
That's all from us for now. We look forward to getting these new audio features into your hands.
When, please? It's not decided whether it'll be a menu option or a lore thing yet? Huh. Okay.
All right. Hello, everyone. So, persistent entity streaming, replication layer,
Paul.
and beyond.
Holy crap, it's Paul.
My
It's genius.
name is Paul Reindel. I'm Director for Online Technology. And I'm going to show you a little bit insight in our technology for persistent entity streaming and the replication layer. I thought about what's the best way to show you something about that tech. And I thought about putting some technical drawings on the slides, or maybe show video like we did 2 years ago. But really, the best way to show you how persistent entity streaming works is to give you a live demonstration. And that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I haven't seen this yet, guys.
All right.
We made the decision, me and morphologists were like, hey, you know, we're going to try and go and play Pyro and come back. And the Pyro line took forever. And yeah, we missed this. So I'm happy to finally be seeing it again. Or for the first time.
So this will all be live, so please bear with me if there's any glitches. So let's keep this rolling. I think I'm supposed to press the button. No, it's already switched. Before we start, a little bit, I just give you a little bit an overview what you see here. Let me set up everything. One moment, sorry. So on this left side, you will see my client window. And on the bottom side, you will see the server renderer. So for this demonstration, and I start a second client, I'm just stopping that. Sorry about that. This is live, all right. So again, on this side, you see the client. And he just logged out because I started a second client. So let's do this again. One more time. On this side, you see the server renderer, which is currently, it has nothing streamed in. I'm showing a small demonstration level. And on this side, you see the entity graph, which is our online database. That's powering what you see in persistent entity streaming, what you play since 3.18.
Okay, this is really cool. Even if this isn't the proper entity graph, the fact that we get to see that, and this is the first time we've ever seen, I think, even what it is supposed to look like in game. So already cool information, great B-roll.
Also have some metrics on the screen which shows the entity graph worker, the requests per minute, per second, the mutations, and you also will see entities created and destroyed once I do that. All right. So let's wait for my client to come up and join this level. So the first thing that will happen when I join this level...
This is literally... I've always thought, like, how are they going to show off server meshing? They have to prove it's in-game somehow. And they're actually going through all the steps of being like, okay, I'm logging into the game. This is actually a closed version of the game, but still.
You will see on that server, everything streams in. And my client get connected and also stream.
Jin, I'm glad you're here for this.
In everything on the client view. What would happen on the behind the scenes is that my player just got unstowed into that shard, and we at real time created everything for this player. So you will see his body is attached to the player. You will see his mobi-glass, his head with all his customizations, his undersuit, and then all his customizations as well on the undersuit.
That's cool.
What you also see is that this player just got unstowed and attached to a static zone object container.
Jin, if when I had seen it, I probably would have messaged you immediately. I was so sad I missed this one. This is the thing I've been waiting for to get back to.
And this is how our zone system works. Basically, on the server, you will see 3 different zones: purple, green, and red. And each zone comes with its own coordinate system and its own physical grid. And this is how we actually, on live, do zone transitions between your ship, empty space, space station, or a planet. And you will see, as I walk between those zones, I will, at real time, update it in that entity graph. And this all happens seamless. So for a client, this is completely transparent. You don't notice that. But this is actually what's happening when you step in or out into a ship. And this is very unique to our engine.
Wow. That's really smooth. Just one object container into another. I guess that we already have that, right? Object container streaming.
For a client, this is completely transparent. You don't notice that. But this is actually what's happening when you step in or out into a ship. And this is very unique to our engine. No other engine has this zone system, and that allows us.
Those are the types of things I'm so interested in hearing. No other engine has a zone system like this. So is this one of the things that does finally set it apart from others?
To do all the amazing stuff you saw in the videos before, transitioning in and out of planets and go from the smallest scope to the largest scope. So everything.
That's cool. We see object container streaming in motion.
We do in a shard. So this is like a mini level, like the mini PU level, is also persisted in this database. When we create new entities in our engine, in StarEngine, those entities get pushed into our entity graph, into our online database at real time, and then from there replicated to our clients. So if I go ahead and spawn a couple of plushies here, you will see they spawn, they get created immediately on my entity graph.
Can we, if there are any devs in the chat, I'd like to propose a game type. AC Commander, single gun deathmatch, LH86s, and they all make this noise.
And spawn a couple of plushies here.
Make it happen.
You will see they spawn, they get created immediately on my entity graph and replicated on the server and on the client. So spawn a couple more here.
Ooh. Oh, that is sick.
And you see this.
Yo, can we have this as a game?
Pengus I spawn in the other zone get attached to the other zone. And then if I go and transition one of those.
Don't shoot Pico.
They will also transition between the different zones.
Oh, wait.
One of those.
God damn.
If I go
that is
and
so sick.
Transition one of those, they will also.
I feel like there must be a bunch of networking people out there that are just like, oh my God, being able to show a networking program this simply. That a little pleb like myself actually gets it when it happens. This is cool.
Transition between the different zones. And the same works for ships or more complex entities. If I spawn this buggy here, you will see this one gets created with all its attachments and everything else attached to it. And this is just my small demo level here. On live, we have up to 600,000 dynamic entities that get created for one single shard. And this is just the initial state. After 2 weeks, 3 weeks of gameplay, when you guys go in and destroy stuff, spawn stuff, play around, it goes in the millions of entities. So this in itself is pretty amazing tech. The next time I want to talk about is our streaming system. Most engines do stream on texture or geometry. We actually stream entities, and we do stream persistent entities. So when I turn on the streaming system here and I walk into this, if I walk over to the red area, you will see that the purple area will stream out together with all the entities on that server. So it does not only stream out on my together with all the entities on that server. So it does not only stream out on my client, but with all the entities.
Okay, just trying to see the connection that gets separated. So that's his player character connecting to, this must be the purple zone. Yeah.
On that server. So
Cuts
it
that
does
link.
not only stream out on my client, it actually streams out on that server. And when I come back in the green zone, that purple zone streams back in with all the entities in there with their full persistent state. So now I have a second player joined. Benoit is going to join me. So Ben, if you want to join, okay, I think you see him over there. Hey Ben. Sorry. Nice. All right, I'm going to spawn a couple more penguins here. Because the next thing I want to talk about is new technology we are right now developing and we are about to put on the tech preview for you to play. And this is actually the replication layer split.
The big kahuna.
And that's the big next step in our great vision, obviously, as you might know. So in this demo...
See, Benoit's like mine. It's not just me. All right? Benoit is a fellow jumper. I appreciate that.
My client and my servers, they are no longer directly connected. Actually, I have a new service running here, and that is our replication service. So my client is connected to this replication service, and my server is connected to this replication service. And the replication service, the sole purpose is to get all the entities which are in the entity graph and stream them to clients and servers which are connected to. And what's really cool about this is, let's do a little experiment here. I mean, you all know our game has bugs. It's still alpha, and sometimes things can happen. So let's see what's happening when I kill my server here.
I actually really appreciate how much Benoit is jumping. I feel validated.
So this is my server, the actual console. So let's just shut it down. And yes, this is where you would usually see a 30K or something.
Is this crash?
You can see Benoit kind of froze there for a bit. And the buggy does a bit weird stuff. I can shoot those pingus, but the world is really in a frozen state right now.
So the server is down?
But I didn't disconnect, because I'm connected to the replication layer and not to the server anymore.
Right, okay. So we saw this in video. Hold up, we could find this. You could find that exact clip. I have some of this stuff. Here we go. Yeah, so this would be essentially this happening. Game's running, servers crash, replication layer is still going and translating all of that data to the client while the server works to spin back up. This was presented to us back in what, 2020? 19? I think this is 2020. No, this would have been 2019, right? Or 2021. Geez, I don't even, it's all a blur. This might be 2021. Yeah, it looks like I saved this around end of 2021. So this was what they were telling us, you know, as a concept, how server meshing was going to work. And now this is it. It's happening. He closes the server and the data keeps going. Simulation and data, huh?
And yes, this is where you would usually see a 30K.
This is pretty cool. How did this feel to watch live, Jen? Freaking breath of fresh air, I bet.
You can see Benoit kind of froze there for a bit. And the buggy does a bit weird stuff. I can shoot those pingus, but the world is really in a frozen state right now. But I didn't disconnect, because I'm connected to the replication layer and not to the server anymore. In the meantime, I'm just starting a new server.
Well, yeah. You've been seeing it for weeks, but it must have felt nice to hear other people cheering it after they finally got to see it, see their reactions.
Let's be a bit patient for it. It should come back online in a second. And as you can see, now that the server came back, it restored the state.
I love it. I love that. Pico's everywhere!
It restored the state, and the simulation just continues to work as before. So this will be, again, this is very early tech, But this is a great benefit of what we have with our replication layer split. But there's one more thing. And let's try this thing again. I just killed my server, and I'm trying to do that again. But this time, we're doing something different. So let's first go in here. This is my development tool. I can talk about it in a second. So let's stop that server again. And restart. And this will take a little bit. I'm running this tool you see here. This is our internal development tool. This tool runs the entire stack of our game on this PC. This is obviously for development only, and I can do that with my small test level. But this really helps online devs and all people who work on the incredible, complicated tech we hear to be able to develop our game. And because I run everything on this PC, it's a bit slow. So let's wait and see what's happening here. All right. Simulation continues. I can see Ben moving again. Hey, Ben. However, what just happened?
Oh, okay.
Well, as you can see on my screen, I no longer have one server connected. I have 3 servers connected to this replication layer. So what you guys see here, this is the very first version
that is very cool.
of a working server mesh.
Damn. Damn. Oh man. Yeah, I saw the three windows pop up and I'm like, wait a second. Is that 3 different versions? Very cool.
All right.
And it's all in the
Simulation
exact same
continues.
across
I
all
can see Ben
3.
moving again. Hey, Ben. However, what just happened?
Oh my gosh.
What?
This is like, that's it, right? Like, oh, we can't have enough players in an area. Oh, we can't have enough planets in this place. Oh, we gotta take those out. This can't be optimized. That goes blah, blah, blah. Man. Oh my God, it's been so freaking long. That is great, dude. Especially after hearing about it so god long ago. I love this.
As you can see on my screen, I no longer have one server connected. I have 3 servers connected to this replication layer. So what you guys see here, this is the very first version of a working server mesh.
Oh man. Good job, guys. Good job, Jin. Congratulations, man.
All right. So now I'm going to explain a little bit how this magic works, because it is truly magic. Each server, when it came up and the replication layer realized there are 3 servers, we assigned different zones to those servers. And we said, OK, server 1, you are the authority over the purple area. Server 2, you are the authority over the green area. And the last server is authoritative over the red area. You can still see that those servers have all those entities replicated, but only the entities within their zone are actually authoritative on that.
So this is something else that they showed us during that same presentation you can see here. Now, this is not exactly server meshing. I believe this is object container streaming. I don't think I have the actual, oh, we have the replication layer suggestion here. So you can kind of get the same idea. This is, again, 2021 when they were first describing this to us. You can see that you've got one server here, another server here. So that's equivalent to, in this video, red server here, green server here, right? You see that they're both 2 different locations and they're both authority over different things. Now, as this ship on the right moves over towards the other server, you'll see as it comes into contact, the authority over the ship and the stuff in the server will change. So right now, yes, it took authority over that moon. And you can see that it shows up in the server here. So it's hard to see because of the controls here, but trying to move it out. Dang it. In the bottom left-hand corner over there, you'll be able to see as the moon and the ship appear on that bottom server node. They kind of transfer over to a different server. So I'm guessing that's what he's about to show us. So you can see right now, they kind of replicated both, but this server node still has authority over that moon, even though it's replicated on both servers. And then the replication layer transfers that information so that all of the different servers have the same stuff, but only one server is saying what is or is not supposed to be true. And so I think that's probably what he's going to say here, but there was like the conceptual look from a few years ago, and here it's in game.
That server. So while I'm in this green zone at the moment, my entity is simulated on that green server and just replicated on the other server. And now, as I transition between those zones, you will see that on that green server, I just lost authority, and on that purple server, I just gained authority. And because my player was replicated on both servers, this completely works seamless. And again, let's do that a couple of times. You see on my client here, I don't notice anything of that. This all happens behind the scene. And this doesn't work only on me. Let's turn on the zone colors and the object, the authority assignment on the client as well. You can see that even entities, as they transition into the other zone,
dude. Oh my gosh.
seamlessly transition to that zone.
That's insane. That is freaking nuts.
And not only that, I can also interact with entities that are on the other side. So if I go on the green zone, for example, and I shoot this, I can still shoot that purple.
Literally shooting through servers.
And I can also just
Desynced
go ahead
bullets
and
win.
destroy that buggy which sits on that other zone. There you go. Always fun to blow stuff
Everything
up, right?
just works as it's supposed to. Across different freaking servers.
All right. So there's more to this. The first thing I will do, let's spawn a fresh buggy. I just destroyed my old one. When I go into this buggy, I will become part of the aggregate. And that means that now my buggy and myself will transition authority together. And this is how we make sure that my player, while he's driving this buggy, is always authoritative on the same server. So you can see, as I drive around with this buggy between the zones, I will switch between the different servers. All right. But there's more to this. So remember when I turned on the streaming earlier? The same streaming mechanics work here as well. Like, obviously, in this example right now, you can see all those servers, they have all those entities replicated. And it's a little bit wasteful because you have 3 servers, all need to replicate all those entities. And that's where streaming comes into play. I can turn on streaming here, and you will see that suddenly my purple server no longer has the red area streamed in. And the red server no longer has the purple area.
It's not adjacent, I assume?
So let's see what's happened when I drive my buggy backwards into that red, into the red zone. What happens on that purple server?
You disappear? Can it not see you anymore?
And I just disappear. So right now, on this server, there's only Benoit replicated. And Benoit, if you come to me over in the red area, you will see that now on this server, there's no client at all. And in theory, we could now completely stream out the entire area on that server, or stream in a new area. And you will also see, as I drive back into the green area, I will magically reappear on that purple server. And this obviously works on the other side as well. Let's get a couple more player join. I have a couple more QA in the back, so you can just see the whole thing.
This is nuts. Like this, honestly, I'm guessing the Squadron 42 is going to be what gets most of the attention from the industry, but I am really interested in seeing what other sort of technical focused gaming channels cover this and what they have to say about it. This is very cool tech, and the demonstration is amazing.
Running in live with a bit more things going on.
This is exactly what I thought they would need to do to show off server meshing. They'd have to load in a team of people. I just didn't know if they were actually going to do it.
And you will see on each server renderer which clients are currently replicated on those servers and which clients are actually authoritative on those servers. And you can see this, the green server, because it's the middle one, has most entities replicated. And then you can see this purple one at the moment only has one
My God, it's happening.
Replicated. Yeah.
Everything just is working too. I know this is a local environment, but
pretty much
this is the best thing they've ever done. Literally, best thing CIG has ever done. I can't believe we actually get to see it in such a clear way too.
One client replicated.
Like, people keep saying, why aren't they focusing on finish the game? Why are they working on all these things? Why don't they just finish? Send them this. Send them this. This is technological feat. It's not the whole game, but it's a dang large amount of the effort that's gone into it and a large reason why it's taken so long.
Yeah.
So many people are blowing past this like it's nothing, blows my mind. It's hard to, I mean, yeah, I think it might be hard to just at face value understand it. You can cry now because I said, you guys didn't even notice I cried earlier. I was very subtle about it. But yeah, this is a very emotional achievement. I mean, we've been struggling with this game for such a long time. Because of this. Well, at least, you know, largely because of this.
So yes, this is pretty much it.
Man. And this is pretty much it.
Guys enjoyed this. It has been a long time to come to this point. And I just can't put in words how much tech and work we had to put into this. Big shout outs to the network team. Big shout outs to the online services team. Big shout outs to Chris to let us doing this.
Congrats for you, dude. Good for freaking him, man. He had to come out after they demonstrated that.
It's been a really long journey to get to this point. And I've got to say, the team has done an amazing job.
How's he not crying?
They've been working diligently for the last 4 or 5 years. We've had a couple of false starts. We finally have an incredible, I mean, the way the replication layer works and how we can spin up servers and down and keep the state constant, even if a server goes down, is, I think, a genius design. And the first time I saw this, about 3 weeks ago, working fully, I cried.
Dude,
It's like giving birth.
like if we feel this way, how
We did it!
Jeez.
And we wouldn't have been able to do this and work on this kind of tech without all your support.
That's right.
100%.
Now, you guys
and your trust.
allowing us to take the time to do it right, to really build it. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So much for everyone, and thank you everyone at CIG that's really worked hard to deliver all this amazing stuff that will be either in your hands now or in your hands very soon. And this is just the beginning of citizencon. We got a lot more stuff to show you.
Yeah.
That's what we need for this
Right.
MMO, guys.
Ooh.
That's what we need.
That's, man.
Great demo.
Good for them, dude. That's nuts. Like, they actually got it, you know? All this time of, yeah, sure, you can make ships, you can make space, you can make planets. Can you make the game? Like, is the game gonna work? Constantly, freaking, ever since 2017, object container streaming, entity culling, bind culling, freaking server-side object container streaming, network actor like so many things, you know? And server meshing is actually happening. Honestly, this was a great presentation. It's really cool. It's a good way to see what they're building with the StarEngine. This is something unique. It's something that we have been saying for a while is the reason this has taken so long. They are not just building games. They had to build a company. They had to build a game engine that could run this stuff. And now they're finally starting to build the game. That's what it feels like citizencon was. It was kind of a statement that the engine is maturing. Now we're going to start to implement the good features that, you know, that'll make the game the game.